There are two things that all MSK therapists have in common the world over. They love free trials and also exercise prescription. So if you're a chiro, physio, osteo, or some sort of ostchirisio hybrid, then head to rehabmypatient.com/physiomatters now and get 3 months on us of the best exercise prescription software available.
Excellent. So hi everyone, I'm Fran and I'm here on Chewing It Over today with Emma Green, which is really exciting for her to join us. And Emma, should chronic tennis elbow always be difficult to manage?
Should it be difficult to manage? No. Does it seem like it's difficult to manage? Yes, it really does. And I kind of came across this totally by accident about, almost 15 years ago now, when I was asked by one of my co-workers at the local hospital where I was working. She was treating a professional drummer who had tennis elbow, and he was asking her all of these questions, and she was like, I have no idea. She's a certified hand therapist, so she basically deals with shoulder, elbow, wrist and hand. That's what she does. And he was asking her, well, can my tennis elbow be affected by my thoracic spine? And she was like, I have no idea. So we were writing our notes one evening in the office, and she just sat back in her chair and she said to me, can I ask you about this patient? And I was like, yes. You always know there's going to be a good story when it starts like that. And so she told me about this guy, and I said, you know what, put him on my list. Let me have a look at him. And so he's a professional drummer. He'd suffered with tennis elbow for 18 months since playing 300 gigs in 1 year. And basically, as he puts it, drummed his right arm to death is what he had done. And so he had traveled all around California, all around the States, looking for an answer to his problem. Hadn't found it, had ended up in front of a surgeon and said, I want surgery on my elbow to fix it. Thankfully, she said no, sent him to see my friend at the hospital, and then ended up in front of me. And I can remember seeing him for the first time because he just looked so down, depressed, demoralized, just was just so done with the situation, because obviously he couldn't play, he couldn't work, he couldn't make money, he couldn't do anything. And I was just the next pair of eyes that was on his problem. And he actually rolled his eyes at me when we first kind of started doing the evaluation, because I just think he thought, here we go again. And so I love a challenge. And so I really took him under my wing, and I was like, I'm going to fix this guy no matter what it takes. So at the time I trawled through the research, and I know obviously as physios, like we're a bit geeky on that kind of stuff. And I really enjoyed doing it. It's like, it'd been a while since I'd been a student, and I just like really dove deep down into the research to figure out how can I help this guy heal his 18 months worth of chronic tennis elbow. And I found lots of things that didn't work, and I didn't find anything that did. And it was like, oh no, what are we going to do? So in my previous life before children, I had been a sports physio. And so I traveled around with sports teams, and I knew I could heal Achilles tendon problems really fast and really well. So I took my knowledge of that and applied it to the elbow, and basically kind of used him as a guinea pig to test these different things out. And within 6 months, he was back playing the drums. And so he went back to his surgeon, and he said, he was like, so happy. And she called me up. She was like, what did you do with this guy? Because I wasn't expecting him to get better. And I was like, well, the research is out there. It's not rocket science. And since then, she has sent me every single tennis elbow patient that comes through her door. So so 80% of my clients are now tennis elbow clients.
Wow, so you really have become a tennis elbow guru. That's an amazing, and it's actually really good to hear your story. So fill us in. So how did you go from treating this one drummer, I guess, as part of tennis elbow on a normal MSK caseload, to being this tennis elbow specialist? Fill us in on how it happened.
Yeah. So once he was a very He's very vocal. He's obviously, on a lot of social media. He was very vocal about how he had healed. And so I had doctors, surgeons, therapists, patients all calling me up saying, how did you do this? Can we learn from you? Can I get on your list? And so it kind of just snowballed from there. And I went from literally seeing, like, as you say, a normal MSK list, 1 or 2 tennis elbows a year, which is kind of the normal standard, to 80%. So, I will see 8 tennis elbows in a day. So as that happened, obviously with anything, the more you do of one thing, the better you get at doing that one thing. So when somebody described me as the tennis elbow queen, I was like, I am claiming that. And so that's what happened. And over the years, how I have helped people with tennis elbow has developed as well. I started to realize that, there are 4 distinct phases that we go through when I was healing tennis elbow. And I also realized that actually it's the 4 phases that we take any patient through. Phase 1 is all about symptom resolution. We want them to be feeling better. Phase 2 is about normalizing the soft tissues because everything is so tight and things are not moving correctly. Let's normalize that. Phase 3 is strengthening. And obviously with a tendon, that's where the magic happens. And then phase 4 is about increasing endurance and function and getting them back to doing everything they want to do with no restrictions. And that's the key point, because I've dealt with a lot of tennis elbow clients, obviously now over the years, and many people will say, well, I'm fine if I don't do anything. And I'm like, well, that doesn't sound very good to me. I'm like, no, it's like not doing anything is no fun. You want to be able to do absolutely everything you want to do with no restrictions. So that's where phase 4 comes in. So I found that I was taking my patients through these 4 different phases. And over the years, those phases have grown and evolved and developed. And I started to realize that the nervous system has a massive effect on chronic tennis elbow. And so central sensitization is a huge issue. It's often not addressed in rehab. A lot of times people are just focusing on that tendon, they're focusing on the elbow. And it's like, no, imagine a pebble being dropped into a pond and those ripples going out over time. That's what happens with the elbow as well. And this is how I explain it to clients, because I'll start talking about the nervous system and somebody say, well, I don't think my nerves are involved. I'm like, you know what? 95% of my clients, the nerves are involved. And so that's what I started to see. So my program starts to address the nervous system from day one, because we need to, especially if they're dealing with chronic pain. If they've had it 3 months or longer, we've got those chronic pain changes. We have to address that, because if we don't, they're not going to heal.
Yeah, great. And this, definitely incorporating this biopsychosocial approach right from day one, and maybe demystifying, what we mean by, this sort of central sensitization and nerves being involved. And, I think sometimes when we speak that, patients think, we've gone, off into gobbledygook lands. They haven't got, they think, what on earth is the physio on about? But like I say, if you build it in from day one, then you're on the right path straight away. So here's the question then. So I imagine you see a fair number of golfers' elbows as well as your tennis elbows. Is there any big differences between those patients?
Yeah, great question. And many of the tennis elbows develop golfers' elbow if they've had it a long period of time. So the principles are exactly the same. The only thing that's different is there's one different stretch and there's one different strengthen. That is it. Everything else is exactly the same.
Yeah, so actually great then. So if any kind of students are listening to this, don't really worry too much about it being 2 completely separate things. Think of it almost like as one condition, but with 2 slightly different management methods and the exercises that they need. So you touched on it briefly about people not doing what they want to be doing and just stopping. So a patient stuck with me, I saw about a year ago, a pediatric patient, just sort of coming up 17, that kind of age, and developed a tennis elbow. And their coach had said, well, you won't go on to be a good tennis player now. You should stop playing tennis. No one can be a professional tennis player if they've got tennis elbow. Like, what would you say to patients to kind of tell their coaches in these situations?
Yeah, that's so sad to hear that. I'm so sorry that person went through that. Tennis elbow is 100% resolvable. It really is, as long as you do the right things at the right time. And again, that's often the missing piece, is people dive straight into strengthening exercises before the tissues are ready for it. And then it hurts and they go, oh, that didn't work for me. What do I need next? Is it an injection? Is it surgery? Is it, something that they really don't need, but they just weren't doing the right things at the right time? So of all the millions of tennis players that are out there, about 40% of them are going to experience tennis elbow as during their playing career. And that includes the pros. I work with other therapists who are working with pros to help guide them to heal their tennis elbows. So the pros are not immune from this either. But it doesn't necessarily mean the end of their career. It doesn't mean to say that they have to stop playing. Most people who find me have suffered a little bit like Buddy for 18 months or longer. And, they can be back on court within 10 weeks once they're doing the right things.
And that's so reassuring to hear, isn't it? Because the fear factor and the stress that brings, and therefore the knock-on on our pain response, or that patient's pain response, can be enormous. So I guess, without kind of giving all the secrets of your talk away, maybe could you just talk us quickly through some reasons that people, I guess, fail in their management of tennis elbow? And people might think, oh, that's me, and that will encourage them to listen to you and hopefully solve all their tennis elbow issues.
Yeah, definitely. I think the biggest missing piece from a lot of people's rehab is addressing the nervous system. So basically, you get a hypersensitized nervous system with the chronic pain response that you're getting. And if you don't resolve that, it'll constantly keep irritating the tendon. So no matter what you do to the tendon, it's not going to heal unless you start calming the nervous system down. And, if we go back a few years, that was definitely a little on the woo-woo side. And if you'd gone back to the beginning of my career and told me I'd be teaching some of the things I teach now to help people calm their nervous systems, I would be like, no way, that is not me at all. Way too woo-woo, but it actually works. So definitely addressing the nervous system, calming that down is the biggest gap that I see. The second biggest gap is that when people are doing their eccentric exercises, they don't get heavy enough. And I've dealt with a few tennis players who have actually rehabbed really well. And so they have become pain-free doing all the normal things. But what they can't do is get back playing because they just haven't got heavy enough. And so as I was sort of like coaching people through this program, I started to realize that, there's like 3 distinct zones of strengthening that people go through as they're doing their eccentric exercises. And so I'm based in the US, and so I'm sorry, I am going to talk in pounds, but you can convert it into kilos. So generally, people who are between 5 and 8 pounds are comfortable doing all the normal things, sort of day-to-day activities, things around the house, things like that, nice and comfortable. Once they're between 8 and 12 pounds, they're comfortable doing more moderate intensity activities, but 12 pounds plus is where they need to be if they want to be playing tennis, golf, weightlifting, things like that. And so people don't get heavy enough. And when I start to say to somebody, you're going to be 12 pounds plus, they're kind of like, no, they'll never, because maybe they've worked with 2, maybe 3 pounds during their rehab, and they cannot fathom doing these exercises with 12 pounds. And they do, and they build up. I've had clients get up to 15, 20 pounds, depending on the activity they want to get back to doing. But if you're not heavy enough, you're not going to build up the tolerance that you need.
That's great. And I think I've definitely, as a therapist, been guilty of that before, worried that you're going to push someone so much, you're going to aggravate them further. And I think a very probably typical response from a lot of people to play it safe, drop the weight, but actually, are we doing our patients a disservice? And it sounds like we are. So I guess one maybe slightly lighthearted one before we end. So I guess what always happens is patients come in and you go, oh, it's tennis elbow. And they go, but I've never played tennis. Who's at risk other than tennis players? Yes, that is a great question. So obviously tennis players, 40 to 50% of them are going to experience elbow pain during their career. Golfers tend to get tennis elbow in their non-dominant arm. And so that was an interesting thing that I found. So they definitely get it too. Obviously musicians, the first patient that I worked with was a drummer. Since then I've worked with, you name it, any kind of musician, especially that asymmetry that they have, that really can lead to a lot of these issues. Desk workers,
People sitting typing on their computer using the mouse all day long. I see a lot of those. And when lockdown happened and people were starting to do all their gardening, painting their fences, doing things around the house, that gave me a lot of clients for sure.
Yeah, I think that sums up a lot of people who I've seen in the last few months with tennis elbow as well. Definitely went either nuts in lockdown or stopped doing everything in lockdown and have now gone crazy. Now they can get back to everything. So I guess I'm so excited to hear you speak at Therapy Live. I'll definitely be there. I think it's going to be a really great talk, and something that's so relevant for a lot of MSK therapists. It's our bread and butter, isn't it? Tennis elbow. It's one of those conditions, and yet so often I think we take it for granted, and maybe it's one of those conditions that doesn't get as much press as, say, lower back pain or arthritis, and perhaps we need a good update. So I'm looking forward to that from you. Where can people follow you on socials, on websites, so they can kind of get an idea of who you are and what you do before they join us?
Yeah, absolutely. So my website is tenniselbowqueen.com. I'm on Facebook, Tennis Elbow Queen, Instagram, YouTube. Can find me on all of those different platforms, Tennis Elbow Queen. I also have a book on Amazon, Tennis Elbow Relief. You can get that all over the world. And yeah, reach out if you have any questions.
Excellent. It's such a great social media handle. I don't think any of us can miss it. So if you haven't got your tickets for Therapy Live yet, if you're listening to this, please do log on. They're selling really quick and you don't want to miss out. Emma sounds like she's going to be absolutely brilliant, as well as our other speakers. So get yourself sorted and come and join us in June. Thanks so much, Emma. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you today, and I'm so looking forward to hearing you talk a bit more in June.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for this opportunity. It's been a lot of fun and I am really looking forward to it as well.
Tests don't guess, we all know that. We want you to test better. Vald Dynamo is a dynamometer specifically designed for MSK healthcare. It isn't a repurposed crane gauge or an inaccurate grip measure. Push, pull, grip and more. Plus, if that wasn't enough, its app for recording and storing the data is brilliant. valdhealth.com/dynamo for the only measurement device you will need in clinic.